10,000 BC to 4,000 BC. The Ice Age. During this period, much of Ireland is covered by ice and therefore uninhabitable. However, Ireland is an island, so the pressure of the continental glaciers actually causes it to bulge and rebound upwards. This has given Ireland its distinctive shape, with the Irish Sea being pushed away and replaced by the river Shannon and the lowlands of the center of the island being raised up. By the end of the Ice Age, Ireland rises 700 feet, or 210 meters higher than today, 4000 BC to 2500 BC. As the ice melts away, people start to arrive. Nobody knows exactly where they came from, but we know they didn't come from Africa, because at this point in time there is no land bridge connecting Ireland to mainland Europe. These early people are hunter-gatherers, and they probably had dark skin, short stature, and were very hairy. They also brought with them the first domesticated animals: dogs, cattle, sheep, and pigs. 2500 BC to 1200 BC. Now we enter the Bronze Age. People began mining the native copper deposits and mixing that with tin from Britain to make bronze. We also see the beginnings of agriculture, farming communities, and the building of the first permanent settlements. Life was still tough, though. There were no roads, no sanitation, and regular famines, coupled with frequent warfare, meant that the average life expectancy was only 30 years old. 1200 BC to 500 BC. This is the Iron Age, and the first big kingdom emerges, the Kingdom of Tara. The new metalworking technology led to bigger, stronger weapons, which enabled these guys to expand their territory into Eastern Ireland. At its aid, the Kingdom of Tara controlled all of Eastern Ireland from the Scottish Sea to the Irish Sea. The Celts now dominated Ireland, and their culture was quite advanced for the time period. They built hill forts, kept slaves, made intricate metalwork, and most famously developed the art of making beautiful round towers. Nobody knows exactly why they made these towers, but the most popular theory is that they used them as lookout points to warn the local settlements of approaching armies. 500 BC to 400 AD. Rome falls. Christianity spreads across Europe and eventually reaches Ireland around the year 400. St. Patrick drives out all the snakes, converts the bards and the druids, establishes monasteries and churches, and the Gaels begin to take over the west coast. The Gaels are a group of people who migrated from what is now Scotland and Wales. The name of their language, Gaelic, is where we get words like gentleman and Aaron, which is another name for Ireland. At this time, Ireland split into two distinct regions, the Gaelic-speaking West and the English-speaking East. Over the next 300 years, the Gaelic kingdoms grew in power and wealth. They engaged in trade with the Vikings, the English, and the Welsh. And during this time, the Book of Kells was created. It was written by monks and took almost 100 years to complete. 700 AD to 900 AD. Viking attacks become more and more common, and in 839, the Vikings sacked the famous monastery of Iona. So the Irish built a giant 400-year-old fortress called Dublin to protect themselves. But the Vikings ended up sacking Dublin too. And then they just gave up trying to invade Ireland and instead started buying their way into the country through the established trading posts. After this, the Vikings and the Irish began to intermarry, and over time, they were absorbed into Irish society. Many of the top Irish families today can trace their ancestry back to the Vikings. 900 AD, 1169, Viking arises, uniting the West under one banner. His name was Brian Boru, and he fought many battles with his rivals in the East. In 1014, Brian defeated the forces of the East at the famous Battle of Clontarf. He died in the battle, and the title of High King was left open until 1166, when Dermot MacMurrough took the throne. 11691543. This is the medieval period. In 1169, the English began to invade. King Henry II landed in Ireland with an army and quickly subdued the southeast. Over the next 3 centuries, the English would try and conquer the rest of the country, but the Irish kept fighting back. Famous Irish warriors like Hugh O'Neill and Rory O'Connor led their armies to victory and temporarily drove the English out. In 1295, King Edward I invaded again and spent the next 50 years trying to break the Irish resistance. He built hundreds of castles and sent thousands of English soldiers and families to live in Ireland. But the Irish kept on fighting. In 1494, the 9-year-old King of England was kidnapped by rebels and held for ransom. This event was known as the Earl of Kildare's Rebellion. When the king's councillors heard about the ransom demands, they responded by saying, "Let him rot." This turned out to be a good decision because the boy king died in captivity and was succeeded by Henry VIII, 1543 to 1690. The Tudor conquest. Henry VIII changes the name of Ireland to the Province of Ireland and begins a campaign to Anglicize the country. In 1541, he declared himself the King of Ireland, and Dublin became the capital. The plantations began with the Anglo-Irish ruling class becoming more and more English, and the Irish people becoming more and more Gaelic. In 1603, James I came to power in England and Ireland, and he brought with him a new religious settlement, Presbyterianism. For the next 87 years, Ireland would be ruled by Scottish and English monarchs who favored Presbyterianism. In 1641, the Irish rose up against their English oppressors in what became known as the Irish Rebellion, 1641. But they were defeated, and the penal laws were introduced, which stripped the Catholics of their rights and their land. 1692–1801. This is the period of the penal laws and the Acts of Union. In 1688, James II came to power in troubled times. The Catholic king versus the Protestant people. The English Parliament wanted to keep a Catholic king off the throne, so they invited William of Orange to invade and take the crown. The Williamite War in Ireland was fought between those loyal to the king, the Jacobites, and those loyal to the Parliamentarians. The Jacobites were led by Patrick Sarsfield, and the Battle of the Boyne in 1690 was one of the most significant events in Irish history. Sarsfield's elite cavalry were on the verge of breaking the English lines when he got a message from his commander to stop the attack. Despite having the winning hand, Sarsfield chose not to disobey his orders. Instead, he retreated, and his men lived to fight another day. This decision has been heavily romanticized, and Sarsfield is now considered a national hero. In 1707, the Acts of Union united the parliaments of England and Scotland, creating the Kingdom of Great Britain. 5 years later, the Act of Union was passed and Ireland was incorporated into the new kingdom, 1801 to 1914. During this period, Ireland is ruled directly from London. Most of the population live in poverty and want independence. Secret societies begin to form, and the first rising occurs in 1798. Society of United Irishmen was a group founded in 1791 by a French-trained lawyer called The society was dedicated to Irish independence, and their plan was to invade Ireland, capture the cities, and gain support from the rural farmers before declaring full-scale war on Britain. The French would then come in and help them defeat the British and establish a new French-backed Irish Republic. Unfortunately for the United Irishmen, things didn't go according to plan. They seized Dublin and Wexford, but failed to win the support of the rural population. The rebellion lasted only 2 months, and most of the leaders were either killed or exiled. The failure of the 1798 rebellion would inspire future generations of Irish revolutionaries like Robert Emmet, who led a similar uprising in 1803. Again, it failed and he was executed at age 25, 1914 to 1923. The Easter Rising. In 1916, a group of armed rebels seized key locations in Dublin and held them for 6 days before being overwhelmed by the British Army. The rebels were led by figures like Padraig Pearse, Thomas Clark, and Joseph Plum. One of the most famous stories from this time is that of Constance Markievicz, the first woman to be elected to the Irish Parliament, who fought alongside her husband, alongside the other rebels. Their daughter was only 3 weeks old at the time. Many of the rebels were executed after the Rising, but this helped turn public opinion in favor of the Irish cause and led to the creation of the Irish Free State in 1922, 1923 to 1973. The Irish Free State was a compromise. It gave some self-government to 26 of the counties, while keeping the remaining 6 under direct British rule. Northern Ireland was allowed to opt out of joining the new Irish state and remained part of the United Kingdom. The Irish Civil War was fought between those who wanted full independence and those who wanted to stay within the British Commonwealth. The pro-treaty side won, and the Irish Free State was established. The new state joined the League of Nations, signed a trade agreement with Britain and established itself as a dominion of the British Empire. The economy was in sharp decline, and the Irish president at the time, W.T. Cosgrave, went to London to meet with the British Prime Minister to ask for financial assistance. Britain agreed to invest £2 million into the Irish economy, if they could use it as leverage to force the Irish to join the UK. Cosgrave accepted, and this was the beginning of the end of Irish neutrality. World War II was raging, and the Irish government had promised to remain neutral. But after the war, the Irish government realized that staying neutral would have a negative effect on the economy, and the country would be better off joining the European Economic Community. This was the beginning of the transformation of Ireland from a poor, rural country to a wealthy, urban one, 1973 to 2000. The Troubles, the 30-year conflict in Northern Ireland between the Protestants who wanted to remain part of the UK and the Catholics who wanted a united Ireland. The IRA, or Irish Republican Army, began a campaign of violence against the British Army and the RUC, or Royal Ulster Constabulary. The majority of people living in Northern Ireland were Protestant and Unionist, which meant that any move to unite the North with the South would result in the majority of people becoming a minority overnight. This was unacceptable to both sides, and the violence continued until 1998, when the Good Friday Agreement was signed. 2000, present. Today, Ireland is a modern, affluent European nation. Its booming economy and low tax rates have made it a very attractive place to live and work. Ireland is also a cultural powerhouse, with its traditional music, dance, and literature thriving around the world. Irish people have also played a major role in science, business, and politics. Some of the most famous people from Ireland include Oscar Wilde, Samuel Beckett, John Hume, Bertie Ahern, and Bono.